Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, welcome. Okay. There was some difficulty initially joining, I guess, but now it seems to be resolved. Hope everybody, who intends to join is able to join peacefully. Welcome, Geetima. Okay, so should we give it another 2-3 minutes before we start?
Yeah, as you wish.
The organizers have said that I should start now. But just to for people joining late, we'll just sing a small song with the Hare Krishna mantra. So everybody can mute their mics. And we'll start with Jai Radha Madhava. Jai Radha Madhava, Jaya Kunda Bihari, Jaya Radha Madhava, Jaya Kunda Bihari, Jaya Gopi Chana Vallabha, Jaya Girivaradari, Jaya Girivaradari, Jaya Gopi Chana Vallabha, Jaya Girivaradari, Jaya Girivaradari, Jaya Yashodanandana, Jaya Brajanandana, Jaya Yamuna Tiravanachari, Jaya Kunda Bihari, Jaya Radha Madhava, Jaya Kunda Bihari, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Jaya Radha Shama Sundaraya, Shama Sundaraya, Jaya Radha Madan Mohan Radha, Madan Mohan Radha, Jaya Radha Govinda Radha, Govinda Radha, Jaya Radha Gopinath Radha, Gopinath Radha, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva, हरि नाम संकीर्तन की जय। श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। गौर प्रेमानंदे। Hari Hari Bol. So welcome everyone to this morning program. People from India and people from Dubai as well. So I thank people from Dubai, of course, for joining us for this program, and especially thank people from India because today is a working day in India. So thank you all very much to have joined us, and have been asked by the organizers of Krishna's Little Children to speak on a very, very important topic today, that is the relevance of Bhagavad Gita in our daily lives and how to live the teachings of Lord Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. So that's like a very, very important and relevant topic, and we must carefully consider the points that we will discuss today. So we will start this conversation by dwelling on briefly with a search for happiness, security, and comfort. So there may be difference of opinion on various aspects of life, on the way we do it, but there is a 100% agreement on one aspect, and that is everybody is searching for a state of happiness, and happiness is defined as a secure feeling and a feeling of comfort. So that generally everybody is in agreement with. So we will start the discussion by asking ourselves a question as to why we should study the Vedic scriptures and what is the basic reason for spirituality. So we will start the discussion on the need for spirituality and Vedic scriptures by quoting from the Mahabharata. So in the Mahabharata, it is mentioned in one of the slokas, Ahara Nidra Bhaya Maithunamcha Samanyam Etat Pashubir Naranam Dharmo Hitesho Adiko Vishesho Dharmena Hina Pashubir Saman. So there are four things which are common to human beings and animals. What are they? Ahara, which is the aspect of eating, Nidra, which is the aspect of sleeping, and then Bhaya, which is defending or getting into a feeling of security and comfort, and mating, which is also common to human beings and animals. So Ahara, Nidra, Bhaya, Maitunam cha. Samanyam etat pashir naranam. This is common for Pashu and Nara. So Nara meaning human beings, Pashu is animals. But then there is one thing that is extra special which only the human beings can pursue, and that is Dharmo hitesho adhiko vishesho. There is some extra special thing which is the practice of dharma or religion. And the last line of the verse says, Dharmena hina pashubir samana. So without the practice of religion or spirituality, pashubir samana. So that is, the human beings are considered as animals. At best, we can be glorified human beings, glorified animals. So we see animals eating, we see human beings eating, animals sleep, and the human beings sleep. And then the aspect of defending, the animals may be defending themselves with their claws, they might be defending themselves with their nails, they might be defending themselves with their hands and legs and whatever they can get as parts of the body to defend themselves. Whereas the human beings may use Scud missiles and nuclear weapons to defend themselves, build comfortable homes with nice security inside the house and outside the house. So we may do all these things, but the aspect which is common is the fact that both of us are defending ourselves. So the aspect of defending is common. And same is the case with eating. We might eat in nice five-star restaurants with latest cutlery. The animals may eat on the road. But the aspect where that is common is the eating. And so as well, the sleeping aspect. We might sleep in a nice air-conditioned room. The animal also sleeps, but the aspect that is common is the sleeping, nidra. And so as well with mating. So these four activities, I would say, are the unfortunate necessities for a conditioned body. It no doubt gives us temporary joy, but the fact is that if we didn't have these four needs, we would have been jumping and dancing all around the day without having the needs of ahara, nidra, bhaya, and maitunamcha. So it's a kind of unfortunate need that we have because we have a conditioned material body. So this search for happiness is many times mistaken for better eating, better sleeping, better defending, and better mating. But still, all the attempts at becoming happy still meets with some kind of a frustration and a sense of dissatisfaction. So, um, 1 second. Just give me a second, please. Okay. So the aspect of happiness, in spite of our best efforts, still seem to elude us. So what is it that is really missing in this aspect of happiness? So there is the aspect of permanency or the aspect of eternity is actually eluding us. Because whenever we are engaging ourselves in one of these four activities, we are doing it for the sake of happiness, and we also need the security that there will be a sense of permanency in our activities. There is always a fear that what makes us happy today, we might very well lose it in future. So that fear is always there. So what spoils the fun of the so-called pursuit of happiness is the lack of permanency and the lack of eternality in whatever we are doing. So therefore, we must consider the scriptures for what is the vision of the spiritual experts. Maybe they have a solution to this issue what we are discussing, which is the search for happiness. So in the great scripture, Srimad Bhagavatam, which is made up of 12 cantos, and in that, the main speaker is Sukadev Goswami, and the main listener is Maharaj Parikshit. So Sukadev Goswami is speaking to Maharaj Parikshit, and Maharaj Parikshit is not an ordinary ruler, but he is actually the emperor of the entire universe. So extremely powerful king who was cursed to die in a period of 7 days. And Sukadev Goswami is telling Maharaj Parikshit, in the august company of 100,000 sages who have assembled there to listen to Sukadev Goswami, he says, Shrotavyadini Rajendra, Nirnam Shanti Sahasrasaha, Apasyatam Atma Tattvam Griheshu Grihamedinam. So he says, Shrotavyadini Rajendra, oh, hear me, O Raja. Nirnam Shanti Sahasrasaha, those persons who are materially engrossed, being blind to the knowledge of the ultimate truth, have many subject matters for hearing in human society, O Emperor. So he says that there are thousands of matters to be discussed. Yeah. So we can discuss Indian politics, we can discuss our Prime Minister Modi, we can discuss the latest goings on in Bollywood and the drug scandals that is happening in India. So there is plenty to be discussed. But still, that is the work of the gross materialistic person. But then what does an intelligent man do? He studies and discusses the aspect of Atma Tattvam. Atma Tattvam means knowledge of the self. So, Griheshu Grihamedina. So, person who is excessively materially engrossed is called as Grihamedi, and a person who is ideally situated in Grihasthashram is called as Atma Tattvi, or a person who is engrossed in the pursuit of knowledge of Atma Tattva, or knowledge of the self. So, what does real knowledge of the self mean? Knowledge of the self means knowledge of the Atma. So, from the point of view of the Bhagavad Gita, the Bhagavad Gita teaches us in the 13th chapter, second chapter, 13th verse, Krishna says, Dehinosmin yatha dehe kaumaram yavvanam jara tata dehantara prapti tiras tatra na muhyati. So we keep on passing one stage of life, which is from boyhood. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Finish my class. I just came.
Hare Krishna, would you mind muting your mics, please? So the 13th sloka of the second chapter talks about how we pass from one stage of life to another, that is from the stage of boyhood to youth to old age. And it's quite natural that at the end of old age, we get another body. And then a person who is not bewildered by this change, that is a person who is dhira, a sober person is not bewildered by this change. So we see how the Bhagavad Gita in the very beginning instruction, and we saw how the spiritual expert of all experts, Sukadev Goswami, he's also talking about Atma Tattva, and here we are talking about how the material body keeps on changing, and what we have to actually inquire is about the soul. So that is the fundamental teachings of the scriptures, which teaches us one fundamental learning from all the scriptures, this, that I am not this body, I am spirit soul. So nourishment of the soul is the goal of human life. So because the soul is permanent, because the soul is eternal, so we move from the realm of the temporary to the realm of permanency or eternality, thus attaining a state of happiness which is also permanent and which is also eternal. So we talked about this personality, Sukadev Goswami, who spoke to Maharaj Parikshit. And what kind of a spiritual expert is he? He has spoken the entire Bhagavatam, and he has heard the Srimad Bhagavatam as related by Lord Shiva to Goddess Parvati. And then he also heard the Srimad Bhagavatam from the lips of Veda Vyas. Vyasadeva is considered as the literary potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then he also, when he was born, since he spent an abnormally long time in the womb of his mother, because he didn't want to be born in the material world at all. However, when he was born, he started running away from his father, Vyasadeva. And Vyasadeva knew that his son was highly spiritually perfected human, and therefore he was very keen on giving him the knowledge of the Srimad Bhagavatam. But here you were, the son was running away from the father because he didn't want to be materially entangled. So at that time, he sent his disciples and told him that please catch hold of my son and give him 2 verses spoken by Narada Muni. And we all understand that Narada Muni is the Deva Rishi, or the Rishi for all the Devatas. So they chased Sukadev Goswami, and they spoke the 2 verses spoken by Narada Muni, and one of them was the aspect of the merciful nature of the Supreme Lord. They talked about Putana, who was trying to feed poison from her breast to Sri Krishna. In spite of that, the Lord actually gave her nutrition. He said that whatever she tried to feed me from her breast, the fact remains that Putana was actually acting on the role of a mother, so therefore she should get my mercy and she should get liberation. And then the second aspect, which Narada Muni's verse, which was quoted by the disciples of Vyasadeva to Sukadev Goswami, so was that the beauty of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And they talked about the Lord, his peacock feathered ornament, the karnika flowers that he was wearing, the yellow garment, which was like looking like molten gold, and then the Vaijayanti garland that the Lord was wearing, and how the Supreme Lord is the greatest ever dancer in Vrindavan, leaving his beautiful footprints everywhere in the land of Vrindavan. And they talked about the lips of the Supreme Lord, where the nectar flowing out of the lips of the Lord were filling the holes of the flute, which the Lord was using as his musical instrument. And how the cowherd boys of Vrindavan were singing the glories of the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna. So by quoting these 2 verses of Narada, they were able to bring back Sukadev Goswami to Vyasadeva. So that means Sukadev Goswami heard it from Lord Shiva, heard from Veda Vyas, and he also heard from Narada Muni. And he also, in the 6th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is mentioned that he heard the Srimad Bhagavatam from Agastya Rishi and Devala Rishi as well. So we find here that if we are considering Sukadev Goswami as the greatest of all sages, it is not without reason. So he has heard and assimilated information that, yes, what's that, Ma? So he was trying to assimilate, he has assimilated the information coming from very great personalities. So, so what really is the sutra or the trick for the pursuit of happiness? Let's try to list out the two important learnings. So, one is the search for happiness is ultimately the search for spirituality. And then we look for a lot of security and comfort in our material lives. Quite contrary to that, in spite of all that, what we find is material life is full of comfortable misery, if we may call it. There may be comfort, but still there is misery accompanying the comfort. So that means the pursuit of happiness, somewhere we've gone wrong. So happiness is not decided by the comfort level, but by our consciousness level. And we also understood from our discussions till now that for happiness, security, and comfort, what is really missing is the aspect of permanency and the aspect of eternality. So, therefore, there is a constant frustration in our pursuit for happiness. So, what is then permanent and eternal? The study of spirit. So, therefore, that is what the scriptures teaches us. They focus the learnings on the spirit or on the soul. They focus on permanent happiness and eternal happiness. So then when we say that the scriptures teaches us to be permanently, eternally happy in a state of bliss, why then the Bhagavad Gita? So that is the second aspect of the discussions today. There are so many scriptures, and as followers of Sanatana Dharma or Hindu Dharma, whatever we may call ourselves as, so we have people who say that I study the Rig Veda, I study the Samaveda, I study the Upanishad, or I study the Vedangas, or some other aspect of the scriptures. So, in one sense, if we may call it, there is some kind of a confusion, and there seems to be something, a sense of enormity, and therefore it leads to various discussions on spirituality, and we are not able to decide what is that one path. Just to give you an idea, the scriptures are actually divided into shrutis, and they are divided into two things, shrutis and smritis. In the shrutis, there are various branches. One is the Vedas, the second is the Upavedas, and the third is the Vedangas. So the Vedas initially was one Veda, which was actually divided into 4 Vedas, that is the Rig Veda, Sama Veda, Yajur Veda, and the Atharva Veda. So these are the 4 Vedas which was later on divided by Vyasadeva after he composed them as one Veda. Hare Krishna. So, and he requested everyone, all his disciples, to be in charge of one Veda, Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Sama Veda, and Atharva Vedas. Now, within these 4 Vedas itself, what do they contain? They have what is called as the Samhitas. The Samhitas are the various mantras which are part and parcel of the Vedas. And then besides the Samhitas, there are the Brahmanas, which is the ritual explanation of the mantras. And then Aranyakas. Aranyakas also are explanations, but they are more the esoteric explanation of the mantras. And then there is an aspect of Upanishads. Upanishads is the Jnana-kanda section of the Vedas, which teaches the philosophy of the Brahman. So this essentially is the Vedas. Then we have the Upavedas, which are, subjects which are contained within the Vedas, or the smaller aspects of the Vedas, like Dhanurveda, the art of military science. And then we have Ayurveda, which is popular in today's world, which is the science of health, or Ayu, or longevity. So these are the Upavedas, sub-subjects of the main subjects. So then there are the Vedangas. So now to study the Vedas and the Upavedas, you need certain limbs, or you need certain kind of help to understand the Vedas. So those are called as the limbs of the Vedas, or the Vedangas. So under the Vedangas, there are various kalpas, which are the ritualistic details. Then there are shikshas, which teaches you the pronunciation of the mantras. Then there is vyakarna, or there is grammar. And then there is nirukta, which is the dictionary. So if you don't understand any grammar, then, or you do not understand any word that is mentioned in the Vedas, then you can consult the Vyakarana, which gives you the idea of grammar, and Nirukta, which is the dictionary. And then all the mantras in the Vedas have to be mentioned in a certain meter. So those meters are called as chandas. And then there is also an aspect of Jyotisha, which is astrology. So such is the vastness of the Vedas that we are talking about. So Kalpas, Shikshas, Vyakaranas, there is Niruktas, there is Chandas, and then there is a Jyotishas. So we are still now discussing the Shrutis. So these Shrutis are unchanged over a period of time, and they are the revealed absolute truth. Besides these Shrutis, there is also Smritis. What are the Smritis? Smritis are the various composition of the sages. It could also include certain theses which have been compiled by the spiritual experts who are sages. So these wordings may slightly vary from time to time and from age to age. The Shrutis are not changeable. The Smritis can be changed because these are the composition of the sages. So in that, there are various things that are mentioned. The main subjects that are covered in the Smritis are the ritualistic sutras, or the tricks to have success in the rituals are mentioned. So tantras explain the various techniques and practices and tantras are generally there. Lord Shiva explaining to Parvati how the techniques have to be practiced for success. So there are various sutras, or rather tantras, for the people in Tamagun, for the people in Rajagun, and for the people in Sattvagun. So Sattvagun is mode of goodness, Rajagun is mode of rajas or passion, and Tamagun is the mode of ignorance. So then, besides this, there are also Pancharatras. Pancharatras are essentially the methods of worship. We in our parampara used Narada Pancharatra, or the methods of worship as explained to us by Narada Muni. Besides this, there are Puranas. And how many Puranas are there? There are totally 18 Puranas, which are divided on two bases. One is called as there are three subdivisions. One is Vaishnava Purana, the other is Brahma Purana, and Shaiva Purana. So there are different Puranas. And then besides that, the Puranas are also subdivided based on the three gunas. So there are Puranas meant for people who want to be in Sattvagun, Puranas meant for people to be in Rajagun, and Puranas meant to be for people in the Tamagun. So besides the Puranas, among the Smritis also include the Itihasas of Mahabharata and Ramayana. So within the Mahabharata is contained the Bhagavad Gita, which is an exception to the rule. It is a Smriti Shastra from the point of view that Bhagavad Gita is a part of Mahabharata, but it is also called as Gita Upanishad. So that makes it a Shruti as well. So Bhagavad Gita is a Shruti and a Smriti Shastra. So the Itihasas are there of Mahabharata and Ramayana. And then we have 6 darshanas. So one is Vedanta, composed by Srila Vyasadeva. Vyasadeva, the end conclusions of all the Vedas, he composed them as Vedanta. Then there are various interpretation of the spiritual texts, which is called as the Mimamsa. This was composed by Jaimini Rishi. So these are essentially, you can say, theses written by different rishis on different aspects. So then there is an aspect of Nyaya or logic, which is composed by Gautama Rishi. And then we have the Vaisheshika, which explains about the existence, written by Kannada Rishi. And then the aspect of yoga composed by Patanjali. And then there is also Sankhya, written by an atheistic Kapila. Kapila also speaks in the Srimad Bhagavatam, and that Kapila is different from the atheistic Kapila, which is who is speaking the Sankhya philosophy. Now the Puranas alone is total of 422,500 verses, or 422,500 verses are there in the Puranas. And if you add to that, there will be lakhs and lakhs of verses for us to read if we include the Itihasas, include the Vedas, include all the 6 darshanas or the theses work of various sages, and then the 4 Vedas, the Upavedas and the Vedangas. So now this is a phenomenal amount of knowledge. Now this should help us to understand why there appears to be contradicting views when people say that, no, this is what the Shastras say, and that could completely differ from another person who says, no, 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 I've read this Shastra and this Shastra actually says this. So we are not able to see all the scriptures in a harmonious light. When a person is composing his thesis, he looks at the subject from a particular view, and he has a particular method of study, and he wants to prove something in particular. So therefore, there appears to be a difference of opinion within the Shastras, which is actually not there. What is necessary is a synthesis of all these scriptures. Obviously, none of us here in our short lifetimes have a capacity to study the millions of verses that are there to get a complete understanding of what our scriptures want to say. So there is a need, obviously, for one scripture which gives the summary of all the scriptures. Isn't it exciting that we can understand all the scriptures just by reading 700 verses of the Bhagavad Gita? So now, Bhagavad Gita is then considered as the Sarva Veda Saram. It is the summary of all the Vedas. And this is now confirmed by Shankaracharya, yeah, the propounder of the Advaita philosophy is the popular understanding of Shankaracharya. And what has Shankaracharya said? Ekam Shastram Devaki Putra Gitam Eko Devo Devaki Putra Evo Eva Eko Mantraha Tasya Namani Yani Karmapi Ekam Tasya Devasya Seva. So he says, Ekam Shastram, let there be only one Shastra, and that is Devaki Putra Gita, the Gita spoken by the son of Devaki. Eko Devo, let there be only one God, Devaki Putra Eva, and Eko Mantraha Tasya Namani Yani. Let there be only one mantra, that mantra which is glorifying your names, Tasya Namani Yani. Karmapi Ekam, let there be only one karma or activity, Tasya Devasya Seva. So actually, this verse gives us a clear idea on the importance of Bhagavad Gita spoken by the spiritual expert Shankaracharya. So always in the material world as well, we look for the opinion of experts. But when it comes to spirituality, we take it a little lightly and we just say, well, this is what I feel. So, what I feel and what you feel is not so important. We have to take the opinion of experts. The same Shankaracharya in the Gita Mahatmya, or the greatness of Gita, when he has expressed, he has mentioned the position of the Bhagavad Gita and what Bhagavad Gita is. He says, Sarva Upanishado Gavo, Dhokta Gopalanandana, Partho Vatsaha Sudhir Bhokta, Duktam Gitamrita Mahat. So, Sarva Upanishado Gavo, of all the Upanishads, Gita is considered as the cow. Dokta Gopalanandana. So the milkman of that is Gopala, who is the son of Nanda Maharaj. Dokta Gopalanandana. Partho Vatsaha. Arjuna is the calf. So Krishna is a milkman who is milking this Amrita out, and Arjuna is the calf who enjoyed the Amrita first. Sudhir Bhokta. So Sudhir means wise. The other wise people are drinking the nectar of the knowledge that is coming out from the Bhagavad Gita. So this kind of establishes on the importance of the scriptures, which is necessary to achieve the goal of human life. And within the scriptures, we discussed on how enormous the Vedic scriptures are, and it's impossible for us to get an understanding of all these scriptures to finally come to the conclusion as to what is the real pursuit of spirituality, which is mentioned in a summary form and in a form that gives you what is essential for spiritual perfection. So in the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, 15th verse, Krishna says, Sarvasya chaham hridi sannivishto mattaha smriti jnanam apohanam cha vedescha sarvair aham eva vedyo vedantakrit vedavit eva chaham. So Krishna describes himself as Vedantakrit and Vedavit. He says, I am the compiler of the Vedas, Vedavit. I am also the knower of the Vedas. So Krishna says that he is the compiler and the knower of the Vedas. So when the knower and the compiler of the Vedas says something, that has got special significance. And he says, Sarvasya chaham hridi sannivishto. I am in everyone's heart as super soul. Mataha smriti jnanam apohanam cha. From me comes remembrance, mataha smriti jnanam, knowledge and forgetfulness. Everything comes from me. And then he makes a punchline by saying, Vedescha sarvair aham eva vedyo. So from all the Vedas, I am to be known. So while the study of the Vedas, we saw how enormous it is. We might miss out on the real purpose and the essence of the Vedas, which is to know Krishna. Vedescha sarvai aham eva vedyo. So I am to be known as the supreme truth. So that point may get missed out. So the author and the knower of the Vedas is saying that whatever you need to know is contained in the knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita. So the last aspect of the discussion today, which is pretty much a repetition of what we heard from Gauranga Prabhu, who spoke to us on the School of Vedic Studies, which is organized by us, where he spoke on the relevance of Bhagavad Gita from the point of view of leadership. So everybody, all the people working in corporations are always considering as to what is the effective method of leadership. So he defined leadership as the science of influence. That is the science of influencing people. And throughout the Bhagavad Gita, we come to see some qualities of Krishna and qualities of Arjuna. And so Arjuna was extremely accomplished. He went to the Dronacharya school. That's like going to some Doon school or something even better than that, where you pay some maybe 5 lakhs or something in India per month to admit your child to that school. So he came from a very, very prestigious institution, which is called as the Dronacharya school. So he had like a successful career and a wonderful track record of never having lost a battle in his life. And here was Arjuna, such a qualified student, who is like a person who can influence society. So, a leader of sorts, speaking to the supreme leader of sorts, Lord Shri Krishna. And Arjuna had his own swabhava and swadharma. Swabhava means the nature of Arjuna. So he is made up of some qualities which are his intrinsic nature. And he also had his swadharma, which is that of a duty of a Kshatriya. So Krishna purposely brings the chariot to the place where Bhishma and Drona were located. And then when Arjuna saw them, he started questioning the very purpose of this battle. So suddenly he developed cold feet and he didn't want to fight the battle. So very nicely it was explained how it was the lack of will to fight of Arjuna rather than the lack of skill. So victory in any battle-like situation, successful leadership starts with a will to succeed more than the accompanied with the skill that you have to succeed. So here Arjuna was experiencing a lack of will which overcome the lack of his skill, which was unquestionable. So going in the same lines, he talked about 12 principles of or qualities of Krishna, which makes him the greatest leader of all time. So the first quality that was mentioned is that Krishna had the capacity to make complex matters very simple. He was a genius in this aspect of making complex matters extremely simple. In the 14th verse of the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Matras prashastu kaunteya sitoshna sukadukada agama payino anityas tam titikshasva bharata. So that the meaning of the verse is, O son of Kunti, the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress and their disappearance in due course are like appearance and disappearance of winter and summer seasons. They arise from sense perception, O scion of Bharata. One must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. So it was quite a traumatic situation, and any war situation is always traumatic. And the war was happening in winter in Kurukshetra. So the principle of doing any work was tolerance. So you have to tolerate. And Srila Prabhupada in the purport to this verse says that because it is winter month or because it is summer months, the lady of the house doesn't say it is too hot for me to cook, so therefore I won't cook. She still does her duty of cooking with a sense of tolerance. So tolerance or being a titikshavan is the quality that a good leader must display. And then the second quality a leader must display is the clarity of vision, which must clear the fog of doubt. Arjuna, in the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, had about four doubts he expressed in the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. First is the aspect of compassion. He felt compassionate to the other members of the army on the opposite side, who were all his friends, who were his relatives, who were his cousins, who were his gurus and his playmates during his younger life. So he felt very compassionate towards them. So that was his first problem. The second problem was loss of material enjoyment. So he was fearing that if I kill all these people, what is the value of all the empire that I'm going to create? I will have nobody to enjoy my material accomplishments. Then the third was he was fearing sinful reactions of the war. He would kill so many people and he would incur so much of sin. So he was fearful of the sinful reactions of the war. So, and then the fourth argument was extremely a powerful argument. He said that there will be a loss of family traditions, which means that all the men will be dead and the women will be unprotected, and therefore there will be a lot of sinful activity taking place, illicit relations would take place, and there will be Varna Shankara. The next generation which will come will not be following any traditions. So there will be a destruction of family traditions. And in the beginning of the second chapter, he talks about how, because of these four reasons, he was in a state of indecision. So he needed a guide who had clarity of vision to remove the fog of his doubt. So, like we quoted the 13th sloka of the second chapter, where we discussed how the old body turns into a new body, and therefore you need not worry on the bodily platform, just fight this war. Because anyway, the soul is eternal. So, on the basis of the eternality of the soul, fight this war as per my instruction. So, that was the clarity of vision which Krishna had. So, the entire Bhagavad Gita is actually an answer to these five doubts of Arjuna. And then the third quality of a great leader is that he never makes excuses. So, Lord Krishna, before the war, we all saw how he was like the Shanti Dut. He went there to make peace with the Kauravas, and Kauravas did not budge from their stand that they would not kill even 5 villages to the Pandavas. So, in one sense, Krishna failed in his negotiation with the Kauravas, but he took responsibility and he became a chariot driver for Arjuna. So, that was another quality of a great leader, which is the third quality. And the fourth quality is he did not have a mindset of scarcity, and he had the concept of abundance. So the Pandavas actually had a very small army of 11 Akshauhinis in comparison to more than twice that quantity which the Kauravas had. So he did not still feel that he has any kind of limitation. He didn't have a scarcity mindset. He had a mindset of abundance. He had full confidence on the wisdom that he had, which is greater than any other asset that you may have. And Srila Prabhupada had just one asset. He had corresponding to about $40 in his hand in Indian rupees when he left the shores of India. And what he did all around the world is history where there is, Krishna consciousness in every part of the world practically. So, what was the one asset that Srila Prabhupada had was the hope and faith in the words of the Bhagavad Gita. So, another quality of leadership is a leader regularly and dynamically adjusts the priorities from time to time based on the changes in the balances. So, very dynamically, you have to keep changing the course of action to do what is required. So that is why he was accepted as the leader by the Pandavas, even though the Pandavas had another person who was technically the commander of the armed forces. And then the another quality, the sixth quality of a leader is that a leader does not consider the fact that I cannot do this. I will not do this versus I cannot do this. So the leader quits, even if he's quitting the war, he quits it by choice. He displayed that in the war he had with Jarasandha, that he decided to quit and come back again, quit and come back again. So it was a choice over circumstance. So I will not do this versus I cannot do this. So that is a quality of a leader. And then the seventh quality mentioned was leader masters self-discipline. So he takes responsibility for his actions and words. Krishna had left, Mathura, and he had settled down in Vrindavan, and therefore he paid no attention to Vasudeva and Devaki. But when he went to Mathura to vanquish the king of Mathura, Kamsa, he decided to stay back, and he took responsibility for whatever happened, and he had the discipline to go and apologize to Vasudeva and Devaki. Then we see Lakshman, who is also non-different from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He had taken a vow that he would not sleep for 14 years continuously during the Vanavas period. So that was a display of wealth of self-service. And so that's another good quality which was displayed, that is self-discipline. And then a good leader, as an eighth quality we can mention, he always places we greater than me. So he does selfless service, as we mentioned. He is also humble and determined. So it's a concept of servant relationship. Krishna, after the war, he wasn't going to get any payment. He wasn't going to get any throne. And he just wanted the Pandavas to be victorious. So that was quality number 8. And quality number 9 is always willing to serve those who serve them. So this is another good quality of a great leader. Can you imagine that Krishna was willing to take up the position of a charioteer for Arjuna? And the method of the war was, whenever you need the charioteer to change the course, then he would be kicked on the right, and that's an indication that in the war you got to turn right. So take the horses to the right, and then you will be kicked on the left to indicate that you have to go on the left. So Krishna took up the position of a charioteer, which means even though he was a leader, he was always willing to serve those who serve him. Arjuna was the foremost of devotees of the Lord, and therefore the Lord wanted to serve him. And the leader always, the 10th quality is that a leader should always have a disciplined life, a life in contemplation. So it's not as though what is going on and therefore you engage yourself in 24/7 conflict in your brain. No. The mornings and evenings were always allotted by Krishna for personal contemplation. So conflict without contemplation will be an activity in the mode of passion. So then a leader, quality number 11, must also have a perfect sense of timing. Yeah. So punctual. Well, punctuality means, yes, you got to be on time, I can't come for 11 o'clock class at 11:30. But besides that, punctuality is also referring to a sense of timing. A leader must have a sense of timing. We all know how Bhishma had taken a vow and he was blessed with 5 arrows. And he said, he took a vow that I am going to use these 5 arrows to kill the 5 Pandavas. Now, even though vow was taken by Bhishma, Duryodhan was not convinced about this, and he said, well, I shall keep these arrows for safekeeping, and just before you use them, I will give them back to you. So Krishna knew that these 5 arrows were kept by Duryodhana. So I'm not too sure whether it was Krishna or he asked Arjuna to go and meet Duryodhana. So he went to Duryodhana after the war time was over. So in those days, they had the ethics of war from sunrise until sunset. And in sunset, nobody would attack the opponent. So after the sunset, when the war was over, Arjuna or Sri Krishna, not sure who it was, but he went to Duryodhana and asked him for those 5 arrows. A Kshatriya can never refuse a request. So therefore, the 5 arrows were given to Arjuna. So therefore, there was a sense of timing which the leader showed, the reason for this success in the war. And then always leaders will practice self-care, meaning taking time for self, managing self. So taking time, contemplating, and then taking responsibility of the decision that he takes. So, as we say, the greatest power is not the power you have over others, but the power you have over yourself. So, the last aspect of the discussion today is how do we live the main teachings of the Bhagavad Gita? So, number one, Arjuna accepted Krishna as the Guru. And when he had doubts in his mind, totally 5 in number, as we discussed, he sought spiritual solutions to his material problems. And therefore, it is a learning for us that we have to address our search for happiness and security on the basis or the platform of permanency and eternality. So that is one of the main teachings of the Bhagavad Gita. And number 2 is that we have to consult the word of the Shastras and the authorized experts to gain Shastric knowledge. The third aspect that we learn from the Bhagavad Gita, so many times we have this concept that people who want to get interested in spirituality, they must give up everything in the material world, go to some forest, sit under a tree, get bitten by the millions of mosquitoes there and the insects there, and then start meditating on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that is the general conception of a person who is taken to a life of spirituality. It is completely challenged by Krishna here. Krishna doesn't tell Arjuna that to leave all these things and lead a life of begging is what you had mentioned in the first chapter. You just give up this aspect of war. So we learn from the Bhagavad Gita that it is not the change of activity which is important, but it is the change of consciousness. We should be guided by the Bhagavad Gita to uplift our consciousness in the activity that we are engaging in. which means that the aspect of transcendence, if we call it, goes beyond just testing God. It is actually about tasting God. So the best translation of the Gita is the translation to life. And then it's very, very important that we apply the teachings in our activity. So there is information and there is knowledge and there is activity. So the more information that we have, it can only puff us up. Yeah. So many people accumulate so much of information that they get from the Bhagavad Gita or the scriptures, and they like to have very lively discussions with others. And each person is exhibiting how great they are in getting information and how great they are and how well informed they are. So information manages to only puff us up with pride, yeah. But knowledge properly built up through application makes us nice devotees of the Lord and doesn't lead us to pride but success in our spiritual life. So the last point of learning from the Bhagavad Gita, how to live the main teachings of the Bhagavad Gita, is to take shelter of Krishna's teachings as it is. And chanting the holy names of the Lord is the basis which keeps us fixed, and the knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita keeps us, reassured. So we will end today's talk by quoting two slokas from the Bhagavad Gita. The 8th sloka, 5th chapter, it says, Antakale cha mam eva smaran muktva kalevaram ya prayati sa madbhavam yati nastyatra samshayaha. And whoever at the end of his life quits his body, remembering me alone, at once attains my nature. Of this there is no doubt, which means we should train ourselves to make sure that when the antakale comes or the end of life comes, smaran muktva kalevanam, we quit our body remembering me, and that is spiritual success defined by the Bhagavad Gita. And while we are engaging in so many activities in the material world, what should be our consciousness while engaging in this activity? Explained 2 verses later by Sri Krishna, which says, Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mam anusmara yudhyacha mai arpita mano buddhir mame vaishyasi asamshayaha. Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu. Therefore, Arjuna, you should always think of me in the form of Krishna and at the same time carry out your prescribed duty of fighting. Mam anusmara yudhyacha. We are all fighting in this material world. Yeah. So we carry on our fight, but with a change of consciousness. What is that? Mam anusmara yudhyacha. Think of me and fight. And then what do you do with your mind and intelligence? Mai arpita mano buddhir. With your activities dedicated to me and your mind and intelligence fixed on me, mame vaishyasi asamshayaha. You will attain me without doubt. So this is the activities in our material life should be so entwined that we do it with the perspective that at the end of lifetime we always think of Krishna, and tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mam anusmara yudhyacha. Think of me and fight this battle of material life. And that, I think, is the main teaching of the Bhagavad Gita and the relevance of Bhagavad Gita in our lives. So thank you all very much, and special thanks to Supriya Radhika Mataji for arranging this wonderful program, which had as many as 60 participants, which is really big. And thank you all for attending. And we have about 10-15 minutes. In case any of you have questions, then you can address your questions in the next 10-15 minutes. And I'll be happy to answer them. If I know, if I don't, I shall check and answer the questions anyway. Thank you all very much. So, any questions that we can take up?
Sir, I have a question. So, all along, for good or bad reasons, we thought that the Ramayana and the Mahabharata and consequently the Gita were the core scriptures. But what you just explained to us, that actually the Vedas and the Upavedas and the Vedants are the core scriptures, and the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, and Gita, which is a part of Mahabharata, actually flow through from the Vedas.
Okay. So, that is really not what I wanted to say. Like we have seen that what you're doing is the right thing, first of all. Mr. Mannat Ruya, is that your name? Okay.
My son's
Okay.
name. My name is Hemant.
Yes, Hemant. So your understanding is perfect. What I meant is there are a lot of people who engage themselves in the study of the Vedas and the Upanishads and the Vedangas and the various branches of the Shrutis and the Smritis. But we don't have enough time with us to assimilate all this information and have a fair understanding of what the Vedas actually want us to do. So, Bhagavad Gita is the summary of all the Vedas, explains what exactly is required for human life. So, whatever is essential, so we got to be very essentialist in our approach of understanding the Vedas. So, from that aspect, if we just learn the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam, and if we are absorbed in learning the teachings of the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, that is more than sufficient for spiritual perfection. So, Bhagavad Gita alone, in its 700 slokas, can give you spiritual perfection, and that's the way to go. So, please absorb yourself in reading, understanding the Srimad Bhagavad Gita, and apply it in your life. Does that answer your question, Mr. Hemant?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So that was a nice question. Any other questions were there?
Prabhuji, you had mentioned that shloka, Ekam Shastra, the Devaki Putra. Please, if you can put it on the group. Would like to keep it with me. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
So, Supriya Mataji, please put that shloka on the group for the benefit of all.
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you so much. This was a beautiful class, and I'm sure a lot of parents found it very easy. But going forward, I think some parents will be asking how to continue this journey. And because you've given them a taste, so definitely they would like to have something regular. So if we can just tell them if they can join some classes or there is a regular study group, then it will be beneficial for them.
I do not know the structure of this group, but if most of them have not undergone any kind of structured study of the Bhagavad Gita, for this group, we can start something as a structured study of the Bhagavad Gita, for which we'll have a panel of teachers to ensure continuity. So we have His Grace Rasamandal Prabhu also, and we will create a panel of teachers so that we have structured teaching of the Bhagavad Gita, and starting from chapter 1, and to ensure continuity, we'll have 2 or 3 teachers, so that even if one teacher is not available, the other can take over, so the study of the Gita can be continued irrespective of the availability of one teacher or not. So everybody can express themselves if they are really interested in some kind of a structured study of Bhagavad Gita, and we will be happy to institute something for them.
Thank you, Yugaji. It was a wonderful class. But you've given us the main pointers to follow the Bhagavad Gita, but I think the Gita tells us much, much more, which I think will come only from a structured study on self-examination, self-realization, forgiveness, how to give charity, how to eat, how not to over-endeavor. The list goes on and on.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether we can address these, or if somebody would write a paper, because I've got about 16, 17 points, because I thought this is something I should share with my children.
Okay.
So will we be doing that at a later point of time?
Yeah, we would be happy to do that, Manju Mataji. And yeah, that's right. There is the whole today's discussion was actually meant to kind of inspire an interest in everyone to dedicate ourselves to learn the Bhagavad Gita and understand the Bhagavad Gita in the spirit which Arjuna understood it. And if people have said that it has been a very simple presentation, it's because Srila Prabhupada presented the Bhagavad Gita translations and he called it Bhagavad Gita as it is. So, as the way it's rather simple to understand of Bhagavad Gita.
I think it was a very academic lecture. You know, the first part of it was very detailed and very academic, and reinforced things in a simpler way. I don't know whether you can hear me, because
Repeat, Mataji?
so
Yeah.
can you hear me? Can you hear
Yeah.
me? Okay, so now I'm saying the first part of the class was just absolutely wonderful. The second part was very concise and nice. So we get the great clarity in how to do things. But I think the Gita has so much more, and I'm wondering if we can have that in maybe in one class or 2 classes, because it's all the time teaching us things, how to live life.
In the early part is that knowledge, and then we should act on that knowledge. So we covered the academic portion, which is the knowledge portion, and then after that we discussed on how to apply that knowledge. In our lives. So application is very, very important. It's like the whole of the Bhagavad Gita is actually culminating on the aspect of bhakti or love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And expression of love for the Supreme Lord is all about activity. So you can't say, I love so and so, even if you say that a million times, it has no meaning unless you express your love by some activity. So, knowledge or jnana with activity is what bhakti is. So, bhakti is the way to success in spiritual life. Is that okay, Manju Mataji?
It's wonderful. It's, I think what I was referring to were the nitty-gritty of the Bhagavad Gita as given in various verses. But yes, bhakti, love, surrender to the Lord. I think you encapsulated those very well. Thank you.
Yeah, to go on further with that is that there are three ways of spiritual success given by Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. One is the aspect of Karma Yoga, and the second is the aspect of Jnana Yoga, and Bhakti is the central aspect of the Bhagavad Gita. So, Karma is perfection in activity, Jnana is perfection in knowledge. So, when Jnana and Karma is combined and there is a synthesis, that is what Bhakti is. So, it's a synthesis of Karma and Jnana. So, perfection of Karma Yoga is Bhakti, perfection in Jnana Yoga is also Bhakti.
It's very well explained. Yeah. Very well explained. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So,
Yes. Thank you, Prabhuji. Actually, I was just thinking while you were speaking that the first leadership quality which you said, the capacity to make complex matters extremely simple, always comes to my mind when we attend your classes, because the way you explain the Gita to us, the study of the Bhagavad Gita with you for so many years, has made it very simple. And I'm sure all the parents over here, most of the parents here are those parents whose children have newly joined. So it would be very nice if all of them can, along with their children, they also can learn. So how important do you think, Prabhu, that parents should also simultaneously join with their children?
Yes, parents should definitely join the learning process like the children. So the success of all our programs has always come through children's classes. And because when the parents are involved in dropping the children, making arrangements for them to attend webinars like this, they also get attracted to the aspect of spirituality. And therefore, it naturally graduates to parents attending the classes. So it would be great idea to have a separate learning to be organized for the parents. And when we have to do it, how often we have to do it, that is something which we have to have the consensus of all the parents who are mentioned, who have attended today. And my recommendation is once a week. That would be ideal to learn the Bhagavad Gita.
Also, a lot of parents could not attend today. They have messaged that because they were working, as it was a working day today in India. So probably we can send them the recording, and we can maybe schedule it in some way that even they can attend. So for the future.
We should time it for Sunday. And Sunday, well, it's working day here for us. but we can still do it either Sunday morning our time at 8 o'clock, which is 9:30 India time, or that's the time when people wake up on a Sunday. But anyway, so Sunday morning would be ideal, or even it could be Sunday evening, say early evening India time. So 4 o'clock if we start here, that would be 5:30 in India. So these are two options which we can think of.